Okay, if everyone will settle down, we'll get started in a few seconds here. Good morning. I'm Rosalie Schaefer, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Manatee County, I welcome you to our Hot Topic program today. But before we get started today, I'd like to ask if there are any military veterans in the audience. And if so, will you please stand up? Please stand up so that we can thank you. Thank you so much for your service to our country on this Veterans Day. Today, we're going to talk about the future of the programs that most of us, especially seniors, depend upon in their retirement years: Social Security, Medicare, and related programs. Due to our increasing population of seniors and increases in the costs of these programs, both are seen as needing fixes to make them more solvent. Some suggestion for fixes would even change the very structure of these programs. What is needed to be done to ensure that those working today will be able to depend upon them when they are ready to retire? We're very excited today to have as our guest speaker Laura Feldman, who is the grassroots manager of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. She has come all the way from Washington, D.C. for this presentation. A native of D.C., she graduated from American University and has been with the National Committee for over 20 years. Prior to that, she organized national programming for the National Science Foundation. She has also served on the boards of many senior issue organizations, such as several state and regional gerontological societies, the Florida Silver-Haired Legislature, and the Grassroots Organization for the Well-Being of Seniors. After her presentation, we will have questions from the audience. At that point, please use the microphone over there for your question and state your name, and that will go into the televised portion of the program. Okay, with no further ado, let's welcome Laura Feldman.
Thank you, Rosalie.
You're welcome.
Good morning. First of all, I have to thank Rosalie Schaefer for inviting me, and Ginny Lighthizer, who is sitting back there. She is a volunteer with the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. Now, she told you I was an organizer for the National Science Foundation, but more importantly, I was a school teacher. So there will be no talking, passing notes, chewing gum, or looking at your BlackBerry or iPhone. Because I came from Washington and I have so much to tell you, I want you all to listen. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Ready? All right, pay attention. We've got a lot to cover in an hour. As she told you, my name is Laura Feldman. I work for the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. It is not a government agency, so I'm not for the government, from the government, and I'm not here to help you. Get that straight. The National Committee is a nonpartisan organization that is founded for education as well as lobbying on the issues that affect seniors, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The first president of the organization when I got there was Miss Martha McSteen, who was the commissioner of Social Security under Ronald Reagan. Class, what does that make her, a Democrat or Republican? Republican. When she retired, we got Barbara Kennelly, who was an 8-term congresswoman from the state of Connecticut, which makes her a Democrat. I tell you that because If I could move, I'd be in the middle. This podium's on the right. So I'm going to tell you who is on the right and who is on the left. Not who is right or wrong, but who stands for what. Because politics first colors what we think. So we're going to do politics, then we'll do a little history, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Older Americans Act, Affordable Health Care Act, and whatever else you want to talk about. Okay. Do I have any Democrats in this room? Raise your hand and be proud. Republicans. Wonderful. Independents. Okay, Rosalie, lock the door. Nobody is to leave this room. Who can tell me, class, the origin of the word politics? Anybody? Comes from the Greek word poly, meaning many-sided, ticks, meaning bloodsuckers. Politics are like diapers. Politicians are like diapers. They need to be changed regularly and for the same reason. So who are the politicians? Well, they're Democrats or Republicans like you, but what do they stand for? So first I want to talk about who wants what and why. Now I know you all have had all the negative ads. You have been inundated with truths, half-truths, and spin. But what we're going to talk about is who really wants what. And that doesn't make them right or wrong, it just makes them right and left. Now, if I could move, I'd go to the right. You're right. So if I'm on the right, what do I want? If I'm a Republican or a conservative, I believe in less government. We all heard that. We don't believe that all the power should be in Washington, D.C. The power should go to the states, the county, the local entity. We believe that too much government is not a good thing. We believe in the free market. Remember the trickle-down effect with Ronald Reagan? I like to call that the incontinence effect. It does trickle down, but you don't know when and you don't know where. But the idea is, with the trickle-down effect, if business does well, we all do well. It trickles down and it runs the engine of the economy, and we have a stronger country. So I believe in the free market. I believe in the trickle-down effect. I believe in less government. And I do believe in less regulation, because we don't want to overtax or overregulate business, because we want business to thrive. That's our basic core values. Now come over on the left, if I'm on this side, if I'm a Democrat, I have some different ideas. I'm not so afraid of big government. As a matter of fact, when the Democrats had the power and for 40 years, we got a lot of big government. We got clean air, clean water, save a tree, hug an owl. We got lots of big government programs. We don't like the trickle-down effect. We believe in a strong middle class. You heard that over and over again. It's the Democrats who want to raise the minimum wage, tax breaks to the middle income. I call that the wedgie effect. You know how your pants kind of creep up, well, and get stuck in the middle? That's the wedgie effect. Democrats more believe in that. So we're not afraid of regulation. We don't like taxes either, but we believe in social programs as well as the free market. So we're a little more willing to have taxes that support those social programs. Do you see we have a difference, class? Here's a joke. There's a waiter in a fancy restaurant. A lady comes in and he says, "Tonight's special, madame, is braised tongue." "Ugh," she said, "I would never eat anything from a cow's mouth." He says, "Very good, madame. Will you have eggs tonight?" The point of that joke is we see things not as they are, but as we are. So that doesn't make us right or wrong. It just means we see things differently. And you're definitely entitled to your own facts, but not your own opinions when it comes to voting. So here we are. We've had our election. And now we know what we have to do. We have the left, we have the right, and we have the middle. But first, a little history. Class, when did this start? When did we start this big discussion in elections and beyond of how much government is enough? What is the role of government? When did we start this? Rosalie? Founding Fathers, you got it. I knew I had a good person in the audience. We started this discussion in the beginning of this country. How much government is enough? What is the role of government? Who should have the power? It's not a new thing, but it feels, tastes, and smells different because when we elected Bill Clinton, remember him? He thanked the American people for letting him live his dream. I like to say that he should have thanked Hillary for letting him live. But when we elected Bill Clinton, we put a Democrat in the White House, and we threw out the majority of Democrats in the House of Representatives because they had been the majority for 40 years. So we never talked about Social Security and Medicare because they were the sacred cow. All of a sudden, they were gone. And then what do? We go way over to this side and we elect W. We get a majority of Republicans in the House, the Senate, and the White House. So what do? Less government, less taxes, free market reform, because that's what we believe is the right way to go. And then what do you American, especially you Floridians, I like to say the Floridians suffer from electile dysfunction. So the next election, you go over this way and you elect Barack Obama the last time. And what do? Because now we had a majority of Democrats in the House and the Senate. So what did they do? Healthcare reform, because they could. And then we had the midterm, and now this big election, and we're kind of back where we started. We have a divided a divided House and Senate, majority in the House of Republicans, majority in the Senate of Democrats, and now we have a Democrat again in the White House. And guess what? That's the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to have the give and take of two parties. So this election, whichever side of the aisle you're on, we have a fresh chance to have social dialogue from the House and the Senate, with the leadership being on the Democratic side. Should be very interesting, and I know we're all glad the election is over, and we hope they can work together to move forward. So that's your history. It's important that you understand it, because if you're listening to a Republican, you're still going to hear free market, you're still going to hear the private market, you're still going to hear less government. And the Democrats are singing the same tune. That's not a bad thing. But if you listen to the words without seeing a D or an R next to their name, you'll know who they represent. So let's talk about the two largest federal programs we have. What are they, class? Social Security and Medicare. So when you say big government, most people aren't thinking of Social Security. They're thinking about maybe a $500 toilet seat, or the $7 muffin you read about. When you think of big government, most people are not thinking of Social Security and Medicare. Social Security first. What's the first word, class, of Social Security? Well, social. Wasn't a trick question. The reason that's important, especially for this young guy sitting over here, is it is a social insurance program. It's not a personal IRA. It's not just yours that you're putting away for your retirement. It is a social insurance program. That's key, that your kids need to understand. What does that mean? Everybody who's a worker, 98% of the people who are working, pay that FICA tax. That goes into Social Security and Medicare. You pay it all your working life. You qualify to get it back if you have worked 10 years or you have 40 work credits. Now, some people die before they retire or before they're eligible. That money goes into that social risk pool so that the widow, the child, or the disabled can receive benefits. And if you're lucky enough to live to 105, God willing, you receive your Social Security benefit for the rest of your life. And the way you do that is because of the people who do not collect, because the money is in the system from all of the workers. So those people who may live and retire 2 years and then kick the bucket, that money stays in the system. Very important. Remember I said you have to work 10 years or 40 work credits? That means if you are here illegally and you have not paid into the system, you do not collect Social Security. So those people who tried to scare you and say, those illegal people are stealing our money, not true. Let's talk about how it works. That way you won't be fooled. And let me tell you this, you guys are going to be fine. Nobody's going to mess with your Social Security, but you have to know how it works. So when they talk about changing it for the future, you can make up your own mind if it's worth it. So you work 10 years, you pay in that FICA tax. Immediately when you pay it, because you're making big bucks, right? Right. That money immediately goes out to retirees, children, the disabled, and spouses of workers. Immediately. What's left over is invested in government issue bonds by law. Now, here's a gentleman in the front row. I know I don't mean to pick on you, but you're brave, so I figure I can. Do you know the difference between a bond and a man? The difference between a bond and a man. Well, I will tell you, bonds mature. But after everyone is paid, the money's invested in government issue bonds, real bonds, with the full faith and backing of the United States government. That's where the money goes. Now, you've all heard there's no money there, it's just IOUs, they're stealing the Social Security dollar. You've all heard that. It's not true. The money is invested in bonds. Bonds are used, and those bonds are used to run the government. Legally, perfectly legally, the same bonds that China buys. If you buy a bond, a municipal bond, or an Israel bond, or a state bond, the money is used, but it accrues interest, and when it is redeemed, it has its interest added on top. So there is Social Security interest being accrued, the bonds mature, and they are redeemed like any other bond. The money is not stolen. Once the government has met its limit for the year, or its budget, what is left over is called the surplus, the Social Security surplus. And right now, there's over $2.7 trillion in the surplus. Now, here's the tricky part. The surplus has different rules. It can be used in times of war and recession. But the reason we have that surplus is because they knew the baby boomers were going to retire. It wasn't a surprise. We knew when they were born, we knew when they were going to school, and we knew when they were going to retire. So in 1982, they changed Social Security laws so that we would be prepared to have enough money for the baby boomers. So it doesn't run out of money. How many of you heard that? Social Security is going broke. Well, let me tell you how you answer that. You always have people working, so there's always money coming in. It never goes broke. What does happen, the Social Security actuaries every year project 75 years to say, how are we doing with Social Security? Do we have to change anything? And what they projected last year was that we can pay full benefits without doing anything until 2033. How old will you be then? I hope you're still here. In 2033, they said, we might have a 22% shortfall. Now, that doesn't mean go broke. That means in 2033, when this young man retires, and I don't mean to pick on you, but we got to think about you, in that year, he might get 75% of his Social Security, not 100%, because we'll be short. So the real question, the real discussion should be, how do we make up that 20% so he gets 100%? Not that it goes broke. So that's where people were trying to scare you. It doesn't go broke because there's always people paying in. So how do you fix that? Is it a big deal? Lots of different ways. You could raise the taxable wage. Right now, Bill Gates, and maybe some of you, only paid in on $110,800. That's the maximum. So you pay into Social Security up to that month, then you don't have to, up to that amount, you don't have to pay any more. If you raise that to $250 or more, that takes care of the problem. If you have a pathway to citizenship for all of the people who are not paying in, who are working mowing lawns here in Florida and getting paid under the table, you have more workers paying in for fewer retirees. There are a lot of things you could do. You could raise the FICA tax very slowly over 10 years. Or you could do a combination of things to make sure that he gets 100%. But everybody was so busy talking about going broke and nothing in there but IOUs that we haven't had that honest discussion yet. So know this, Social Security is not in trouble. And here's something else you need if you only take one thing away. Social Security does not add 1 penny to this deficit. It pays for itself 100%. Social Security pays the rent, the Social Security workers sending out the checks. All of Social Security business is paid for through that FICA tax. It doesn't take any money from the rest of the government. So it pays for itself 100%. Doesn't add to the deficit, doesn't take any money from general revenue. That's very important, because the other thing you heard candidates say is, we can't afford these entitlements. You heard that? You guess what they're talking about? They're not talking about farm subsidies. They're not talking about bailouts. They're talking about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, older Americans, the programs that support a healthy, secure retirement. So we have to be very careful what the words really mean with spin. What is an entitlement? And it's not Social Security. It's an earned benefit that you have paid into or your spouse has paid into all of your working life. So Social Security is not the problem. But here's my little warning, and this isn't a scare tactic. It's what's happening next. We got the election done. Whew. Now we have the lame duck Congress. And I wish I could think of a good joke for lame duck. If anybody knows one, tell me. The lame duck Congress means these are the guys who a lot of them are leaving. So they really shouldn't care about the next election. They should be caring about the legacy they leave. But the first order of business is the budget, the fiscal cliff you've all heard about. And I know that the president, for all the right reasons, wants to have a grand bargain, meaning he wants to reach across the aisle and solve this deficit problem so that with the other side, because I work for the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare, we are saying, and this is our opinion, I will always tell you it's an opinion, that Social Security didn't add to the deficit, so it should not be used to offset the deficit. And nobody's going to take the chance of saying, oh, we'll use Social Security dollars. But what they're talking about is something called a changed CPI. I won't go into it except this. They're talking about changing the way that they figure the COLA. This year you're getting 1.7 increase in the cost of living. And they're talking about changing the way they figure that. And all you need to really understand is it would be less of a COLA. And I mention it because it's Veterans Day. That would affect the veteran benefits, as well as the federal government benefits for federal workers, as well as seniors who rely on a cost of living increase. So pay attention when they talk about adjusting, they may not say cutting, adjusting the cost of living adjustment, the COLA. So listen for that, because that's going to be discussed by the Democrats as well as the Republicans. It's a good bargaining chip. Some see it as that. So if you care about your COLA, not for you as much as for your children and your grandchildren, pay attention to that issue. The bigger issue is Medicare. Medicare, we know, is health care for people who reach the age of 65. Now, Social Security, you just have to pay in 10 years or have 40 work credits. Medicare, you have to be eligible by turning 65. And it's also called an entitlement, but it's also an earned benefit because you paid into it with your FICA tax all of your working life. So I like to say Medicare is like a hospital gown. It doesn't give you full coverage, but you know what's hanging out in the breeze. It's a pretty good program that is supposed to cover anything that is medically necessary. So this lady goes to the doctor, and she says, I'm Mrs. Smith, doctor, did you do my husband's tests? And he said, oh, yes, I did. But you know, there's so many people named Smith, I'm not sure which test was your husband's. He either has AIDS or he's got Alzheimer's. She said, you have to take the test again. And he said, well, you know, Medicare will only pay for it one time. She said, what am I supposed to do? He said, I'll tell you what, take your husband downtown. And if he finds his way home again, don't sleep with him. You'll know what he has. But Medicare is supposed to cover what is ever medically necessary. Medicare A is the hospital part. That's where you've paid in your FICA tax to the Hospital Insurance Trust Fund. Medicare B is the doctor part. That is supposed to cover what is ever medically necessary. We know it doesn't cover hearing aids, facelifts, tummy tucks, but if you need cataract surgery or even an eye lift, you are covered. You have a guaranteed benefit. Then we got Medicare C. That was originally called Medicare Plus. And the government, because we were on this side of the aisle at the time when we got Medicare C, they didn't like all that big government controlling Medicare. They wanted the government to subsidize private companies to offer managed cares. So the government subsidizes those Medicare managed care plans. They're now called Medicare Advantage. So here's what that is. This young man dies, kind of sad, goes to heaven, and there is such a long line waiting, and St. Peter is just moving that line along. And he gets up to the front, and St. Peter says, stop, wait, I want to talk to you. He says, what do you mean stop? Everybody else went in. That lady, you let her right in. He said, oh, well, she's a mother of 5. She was a saint. Oh, what about that gentleman over there? You let him in. Well, he was a carpenter like Jesus. What a wonderful man. He said, well, I'm a good guy. St. Peter said, what do you do? He said, I'm the manager of an HMO. St. Peter said, I apologize. Of course you can go in, but you can only stay 3 days. That's managed care. And the idea is they're going to take care of you. You have to sign up for their plan, which is a private plan, and they will manage your care. And then we got, that was A, hospital, B, doctor, C, managed care, and then Medicare D, the prescription drug benefit. Now, when I was in college, I have to admit, although this is being taped, be careful, you can cut this. When I was in college, we used to take drugs to make the world look weird. Now the world looks very weird, and we take drugs to make it look better. But we all, at one point or the other, need a prescription drug benefit. Does anybody wonder why the prescription drugs are in the back of CVS and the cigarettes are in the front? Something's wrong here. But anyway, Medicare D is the prescription drug benefit. And again, that was under the Republican agenda to put it in the hands of the private sector. So you join a private insurance plan that will offer you the prescription drugs you need. And I did put a paper in the back of your SHINE program in the state of Florida. If you need help deciding which plan to sign up for, they will do it for free. It's the best deal going because you have about 40 plans to choose from of prescription drugs. They will help you decide without any prejudice. They won't tell you which one, but they'll give you the top 3, because it is time to sign up for your Medicare D plan. And you should look at it every year because they can change their premiums and what drugs they carry annually. So the plan you had last year may not be the best plan for you this year. Very important. So, do we have socialized medicine in this country? Yes, we do? Where?
I think everywhere.
You think everywhere.
I think in a way.
In a way, she thinks we do. You're wrong. But we do have it. Who can tell me where it is? Specifically. Managed care? Nope, that's private companies. VA, of course you veterans, you should have told me this. The VA is owned by the government, run by the government. The doctors are hired and paid by the government. The prescription drugs are negotiated by the government. It is socialized medicine, as is the Indian Health Bureau, because it is a government operation. So those people who were scaring you about Obamacare being socialized medicine are really very wrong. It is not owned, run, or operated by the government. There will be reimbursement prices that are capped by the government, as Medicare. In other words, certain procedures, the doctor who chooses to be a Medicare provider will only agree to accept assignment. He or she will only get what Medicare says the fee is. They could charge whatever they want to anybody else, but Medicare does cap prices, as does Medicaid. It is the same in Obamacare. It's private insurance companies will be competing to offer you policies in what are called exchanges. So it's very important that you go into this understanding what is socialized medicine. So Medicare is not. Medicare is a program that was started in 1965. And why? Insurance companies didn't want to cover old people. You're not very profitable. So that's why it was formed to begin with. So what's the problem with health care? Cost. Everyone agrees, Democrats and Republicans, that we are spending way too much money on health care. So how do we slow the rising cost of health care? Well, do you remember when Obama was running for president the first time? Let me tell you a little secret. When anybody runs for office, there's 2 kinds of fairy tales. The first one is, once upon a time. And the second one is, if elected, I promise. But he did promise to do something about health care. And why did we get this huge program called Obamacare? Because there was no program to change. Think about it. How do you reform health care and bring down price when we didn't have a system? We didn't have a health care system. So it wasn't so easy to just change something. So what they've tried to do in this law is look over the whole spectrum of health care and how it is paid for and tinker around the edges, reimbursing hospitals for outcomes, for better outcomes, not paying hospitals when you get readmitted because you have an infection from the hospital, paying healthcare providers, paying general practitioners more, paying specialists less, telling insurance companies you have to spend 80 cents of every dollar on the beneficiary. You have to, those are things that are in the law. What it's trying to do is very slowly between 2010 and 2023, putting in parts to make healthcare more affordable. Some of it isn't going to work. There was a lady here who told me that in one of our things it mentions the Class Act. That's already been taken out. The good news about this healthcare law is it doesn't come from Congress to change it. It comes from Health and Human Services. So if something is not working, they can pull it out. The Class Act was something that Ted Kennedy really wanted to see happen. It was a part of the law that said you have to pay into it for 4 years as a worker, and then if you need home care, you can get approximately $50 a day to help you get someone in your house to help you with home care. And they refigured the cost of it and decided it was not affordable as the way it was written. So they pulled it. There were death panels in it originally. Anybody know about the death panels? You know what that was? That was a clause that said if you make an appointment with your doctor because you want to talk about maybe durable power of attorney or a living will or hospice for a loved one, if you want to talk about it, you make an appointment and the doctor will get paid. Right now, if you make an appointment just to talk, they don't get reimbursed. They have to do a procedure. And while they're doing that, you could talk about it. So it was a way for the physician to get paid if you initiated the conversation. But it wasn't worth it because of all the negative spin. So they pulled it from the law. So you need to understand the ACA or the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare is an attempt to get a handle on health care costs. And you can't do that for Medicare without doing it for everybody. Medicare doesn't work in a vacuum. It's part of health care, lack of system, for everybody. Insurance companies set their own rates. Medicare has guidelines, but it's still the private sector. Doctors don't have to accept assignment. So it becomes a very big picture. And here's a real fact. Do you realize there is more money spent on Viagra and on breast implants than there is on Alzheimer's research? That means in 20 years, there will be people with very perky bodies and no idea what to do with them. But the sad thing about that fact is that we pay for what we want. Look at your kids. I'm sure they have flat screen TVs, and I'm sure they have a lot of things that you would consider a luxury. But we do in this country pay for what we value. So here's the question, and it's your question to answer. Do we value Social Security and Medicare enough to fight for it for our children? They're not going to take it away from you. This is for the next generation. And when they talk about this fiscal cliff and this budget, they're going to be talking about health care as well, specifically Medicare. How can we save money in Medicare so that we don't go over this fiscal cliff? And again, I'm going to say, it wasn't Medicare and Social Security that got us into this. Should it be used to get us out? Now, I don't say we don't change. I say let's have that honest discussion about health care overall and how Medicare fits into the picture, rather than cutting programs that keep us well and give us a secure retirement. The real elephant in the room is Medicaid. Medicaid, and especially in Florida, is health care for people below the poverty line. And I would guess that there are people in this room who look just like us who have had to be on Medicaid. Because if you've had a loved one in a nursing home, you've spent most of your assets. If you've had the misfortune of being a widow, many widows do not have a pension from their spouse. They end up spending down as well. The reason I say Medicaid is the real elephant in the room, because Medicaid is paid for by your tax dollars, 100%. It's all of us paying for it, and the state of Florida has a deficit, and the federal government has a deficit. So how do we pay for poor people? How do we pay? Now, under this law, the ACA, this law raises the eligibility age for Medicaid people so that more people can have Medicaid benefits. And that's why your governor didn't want to accept this law, because the federal government is offering to give the state of Florida and every state about 80% of what they need to cover the cost for more poor people. But after 3 years or 4 years, the state has to match that money and come up with the money to take care of the poor. Nobody has the answer, folks. Not the Democrats or the Republicans. It's a tough issue. What do we do with poor people? Do we give them the support that we hopefully keeps them out of the street? Do we give them the support that the children have food stamps, have the nutrition they need, in conjunction with the private sector, because I work with a food bank that's private? What do we do? How do we pay for the poor? Unfortunately, they don't go away. And unfortunately, they often look like us. I don't know how many of you saw both conventions, but at one of the conventions, and it happened to be the Democratic one of my Florida volunteers got a chance to speak. It was at 5:30, so none of you were watching, but I did. She spoke. They taught her how to read out of 3 teleprompters, and she just told her story. She worked for Verizon, but her husband got Alzheimer's. And after she sold her house and the second car, and she spent everything she had, she needed to hold on to her 401k. She went to the state, it was Ohio at the time, she now lives in Florida, and she said, I want to keep my 401k so I have something. And they said, no, spend it, don't worry. If you spend it, you'll get Section 8 housing, you can go on Medicaid, you'll be fine. And she said, I don't want to be fine on Medicaid, I want to take care of myself. So she went to an elder care lawyer, and the answer was to divorce her husband so that she could keep her 401k. And when she tells the story, she always chokes up because she still feels guilty. The only good thing is he never knew, because he was so far gone. She still visited every day. He didn't know who she was, but she came every day. And when he died, she at least had her 401k. She was still working. And now she has saved enough for 2 years if something happens to her. And she's bought long-term care insurance. But she was able to avoid Medicaid because she still had something. But I have another volunteer who had it all, and she didn't have that fallback. And she is now on Medicaid cleaning houses. And she had a mansion at one time. So I don't want to say look around, but Medicaid looks like us. It's not just those people. It's people that have fallen. We're all one illness away. So this is a tough issue, and it will be in the mix in the talks on the fiscal cliff. Now, I want to leave time for questions. But if you have a question, you have to go to the microphone. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, anything, I'm ready. If you don't have them, I'll ask them. Great.
Thank you. This is working?
Yes.
You said that in the Affordable Care Act that the Department of Health and Human Services can remove things from the act?
That is correct. It doesn't take an act of Congress.
how can Congress delegate legislative powers that to, I know departments can, they have rules, you know, and when a piece of legislation passes, the legislation says that that they will enact this law by rule. But I didn't know that. I know in the state government they can't do that. They can enact rules, but they can't take things out of a piece of legislation, which is what I think is just very unusual, that the federal government, well, I guess it isn't unusual that they can do things that the state can't do, but it actually says in the law that a department can remove things from the law?
It doesn't state that in the law. Her question is, how can the Affordable Care Act be changed, not by Congress that writes legislation, but by the Department of Health and Human Services under Kathleen Sebelius. That's the way the health care law was set up, because all 2,000 pages has a lot of room. There's an Office of Innovation, as an example. That would be, can we replicate, let's say, the Mayo Clinic? If the Mayo Clinic shows that they can have better outcomes for less money, then under this law, someone can try to do the same thing under the Office of Innovation. If there's something that's not working, that can be repealed. Because if it went through Congress, each new part, they're not going to add a new big part. If they wanted to add long-term care, let's say, a long-term care insurance policy other than the Class Act, it may have to go through Congress if it requires new monies. But as the law stands, it has been given the power under Health and Human Services to adjust the different parts, if it's working or if it's not working, to give it until 2023. And the whole idea of that is, this is an experiment. We didn't have a system to change. So we're tweaking a lot of different things. And I think that's kind of brilliant, because you know how long it takes to get something through Congress and how polarized this Congress has been. Does that answer you? Thank you.
My name is Hugh Peterson. My comment or question has to do with the trust fund for Social Security. Though I understand about the trust fund and the bonds. I think on a total budget basis, when we redeem those bonds, we need to borrow money. Would you clarify that?
All right, his question is about the bonds or the IOUs. He understands how we're talking about redeeming them, but where is the money coming from, and how do we spend it? The money, this is always tricky to understand. All of our money is IOUs. All of our money in this country is electronic, if you will. When we pay his salary, we don't take his dollar bills and put them in the bank. It's an electronic transfer, as are the IOUs. When the government is in debt, it does have to decide, who do we pay first? That's true. And where do we cut when we really don't have the money? But in a sense, it's a shell game, because it's moving the electronic money around. When we have paid into a program such as Social Security and Medicare, you bet your boopy we're going to get paid first. It would be not only political suicide, but when you have the full faith and backing of the United States government, if it didn't repay a debt that people have paid into, there would be some sort of a hue and cry like you've never heard before. Unlike other programs, now when you talk about the military budget, since it is Veterans Day, the military looks out 15 years. And they put in requisition for, let's say, I don't know the name of the planes, the really expensive planes that they want to build, or the shield they want to put around from another country. That is money that may have been requested and even said that we would approve it, but it's money that hasn't been in the mix. So you can pull those monies easier than you can from a program that has been paid into. So that's why it's a fiscal cliff. Who do we pay first? And actually, I will fault President Obama. The last time we had a fiscal cliff, he threatened, or basically he said, we don't know if we can pay out Social Security. Remember that, Jenny? Jenny used to work for the Social Security Administration. That was a scare tactic. There is no way he would not have paid Social Security IOUs. So to answer the question as best I can, it is an IOU, but the ones that have been paid into are the first ones that have to be paid. And that's where there's some leeway in the surplus. Because if you have $2.7 trillion that are an accounting measure in the surplus, it's easier to use some of that money to offset the deficit because it's not in the government issue bonds. And that's a good reason a lot of people would like to privatize Social Security. So the money is actually in the private sector. And that would be a boost to the economy as far as they're concerned. As far as you're concerned, thank God it wasn't in there the past years when my 401k became a 101k. So it is an accounting shell game, but in our favor for Social Security and Medicare.
Myra Jones. It seems to me like part of the expense of these medical programs comes from the fact that there are several of them. It seems to me that if they were consolidated, everything under the same system, it would be a lot cheaper. So it seems like we ought to educate people to the fact that socialism is not a dirty word, that every democracy in the world is partly socialistic, and that we could, if we were to take the private profit out of our medical system, we would not only make it cheaper, but we would also get rid of the built-in conflict between profit and the welfare of the patient.
What her comment was, for those who may not have heard, was socialism doesn't necessarily have to be a dirty word, that the only way we really could have gotten a handle on healthcare is if there was a level playing field. And the other name for that is we talk about single payer or a national healthcare system. And quite frankly, we were not ready for that. This president made, I'm sure, a very calculated decision when he became president. Could he move us towards single payer? And I think the answer was, no way, Jose, could he have gotten that done. So he went for the lesser of, I don't want to say two evils, but the lesser of what he thought he could get done. And he went for this expanded ACA that tries to get a handle on things. Because the American people, quite frankly, are afraid of socialism. They are afraid of anything that smacks of government control. And I think it's something, that's why people don't even know that the VA is socialism and does pretty well. But the word liberal and the word socialism became very dirty words during the last few years. So it will take a culture change if we choose to get there. And by the way, one of the reasons I thought this election would be so close were the Democrats who were so disappointed in this president because he didn't go for single payer. But he didn't because there wasn't any way that the American people at that point in time they figured would go for that. But you're correct. If we had a single payer, we could get a handle on costs. We're trying this way first. See what happens next. There was someone else?
My name is Jo Williams. We've heard a lot about how much Social Security costs, And you said that it's not as much as we think because we pay for it as we go. But what we've also heard is that when Social Security was first put in, the people were 65 and they died around that time. And now they're living much longer, and this is making Social Security cost a whole lot more. How do you handle that?
Great. Her question is, we've all heard about when Social Security started, everybody died at 65. That was based on that. And now we're living longer, and we're costing more. So how do I respond to that? Is that correct? All right. Well, first of all, they've raised the retirement age to 67. So your kids cannot retire till they're 67. Also, in 1982, they changed Social Security. As we've gone along, it has changed. It hasn't stayed the same. But in 1982, there was the Greenspan Commission that changed Social Security in that you are now double taxed. If you have an income over about $35,000 as a couple, your Social Security is considered income, so you're double taxed on it. So does it cost us more, and can we afford it? I'm telling you again, those Social Security actuaries who look out every year take into consideration the aging population, take in consideration fewer workers, more retirees, all of the things those actuaries do. By the way, you all know what an actuary is? It's really an accountant with less personality. But those guys who are the number crunchers, they take all of that into consideration. And they're still saying, we're good to go till 2033 with all the bad stuff. Now, every April, they will give us another projection, and it could be sooner rather than later. But that 2033 is based on the worst case scenario. If the economy turns around, if we have a pathway to citizenship and we get more workers, if we have another .com where there are fewer workers earning more money, remember when that happened, we were saying, oh my God, we don't manufacture anymore. How are we gonna cover Social Security? And we had all of these young people, and we still have a lot of them, making a lot of money. So it's not a cliff that we're worried about falling over. We need to look at it and say, how do we secure it beyond 75 years? But at this point, we're okay. One more question, then I'll
My
have
name
words
is
of wisdom.
Russell Owens, and I would like to know why, if I make $20,000 a year, I pay 100% on that whole amount for my Social Security and Medicare, while someone who makes millions, they stop paying at 105 or 7, whatever you said it was.
110.8, that went up
110.
this year.
I don't see
Why?
it.
Because one of the wonderful beauties of Social Security, because this question was, if he makes $100,000 a year, why does he have to pay in the same amount as Bill Gates? Is that a good?
Correct.
That's correct. Okay. First of all, I like Bill Gates. I'd like to be Bill Gates. The beautiful part about Social Security is it's equal. You pay in based on what you make. Maximum, last year 110.8. It doesn't care if you're black or white or ugly or pretty, fat or skinny. You pay in, you take out. It's based on your earnings record. So if you are the lowest wage earner, you actually get a better rate of return that bumps you up. Because the whole idea of Social Security, and I should have said this before, is to be a safety net. It was never designed to be your full retirement. If you're making $100,000 and Bill Gates is making $100 million, he still only gets out what he put in. He doesn't get any more. If you make $100,000 and he makes $100,000, he stops paying in. He gets out the same amount as you do. It's a wonderful program that says we are equal. If we means test it, and by the way, they're going to talk about means testing Medicare, and they're going to talk about means testing Social Security. That means this lady here got lucky. She married well. She doesn't need it, even though she paid in all her life. That's not the way it was designed to be. The same for Medicare. It was designed to be, we're all in this together, and if you've paid in, you are just as eligible as Bill Gates to take out. Let me just end with some words of wisdom, Rosalie. 3 things. Winston Churchill said, "You can trust the American people to do the right thing after they've tried everything else." I think he knew us. We're not going to get anything in this democracy perfect, because democracy is messy. It's all about different ideas. It's all about fighting over how do we get this done, because nobody has the right answer. We have different ways of approaching the issues, and we constantly have to work at getting it better. If not right, better. My mother said, if ignorance is bliss, why aren't there more happy people? Well, we have a lot of ignorant people who don't really care. They care about themselves. They care about what's in it for me, and we all do to some degree. But these are issues that are worth wrestling over, mostly for our kids and our grandkids, because these are programs that have been wonderful safety nets up to this point for people in this age group here, including me. And lastly, Charlie Brown said, if life is a book, why aren't the answers in the back? Well, the League of Women Voters, which is one of, I said before, my favorite organizations, you try to bring to light what are the choices in clear, understandable language. If each of you go out and take something you learned today beyond these walls and talk to your kids or your neighbor who's maybe from the other side of the aisle and have a real discussion about the value that you place on these programs without the spin, how they work, and what's at stake when we talk about it with this physical cliff, I think we'll all go away being a little smarter, a little brighter, and being in on what's to come in the Lame Duck Congress. Rosalie, thank you for inviting me. Thank you all for being a wonderful audience.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful talk. We really appreciate it. I think you've enlightened us a lot today. I learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot, but that showed that I didn't. Really. Our next event will be on November 29th when we hold a meet and greet for the local elected officials at Ezra Cafe. And there's a flyer on that in the back. We hope you can make it. There will be no Hot Topic in December because we'll be having our Christmas, holiday party. And I want to thank METV for taping our program today. And you can watch the program on their station at metvweb.com. And you can check their schedule if you want to watch it on television. And our website is lwvmanatee.org. And I thank you all for coming again. And before we disperse, our treasurer would like to say a few words.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you all who are watching on METV for watching. Thank you, METV, for doing the superb job that you always do for us. We so appreciate it. As you know, the League is a nonpartisan organization. Our mission is to encourage well-informed citizen participation in the political process. We provide nonpartisan, fact-based information. We do it on our website. We do it in issue-specific presentations to community groups and in forums like these Hot Topics. We provide information also in written form, like the voter guides that we distributed throughout the community during this last election cycle. And many people have commented to us that the pro and con, or both sides of the amendments, helped them to decipher and figure out exactly which way they should vote. Our ability to be effective depends, of course, on our funding. There are many ways to support the League. In fact, those of you here today, we have a little donation jar in the back of the room. But we do invite you to join the League, and or if you're interested in making a contribution, please visit our website, as Rosalie just said, lwvmanatee.org. Thank you so much.